So I guess talking a little bit about the waterfront
Yes.
and the tunnel.
Yes.
So it seems like on some of the issues such as the head tax and looking at the green fee, that, I mean, your stance is largely we need to make a good business environment for people and that kind of thing.
Right.
So as far as the public money that's going towards building the deep bore tunnel,
right.
I guess where do you reconcile those kind of ideas, you know, with having this big project that
right.
you know, some people don't think needs to be built in that way.
Right.
And at one point, do you think, like, how much money would be too much?
Well, let's look at what we've got with the tunnel project. This is something I've worked on for 5 years, 5+ years, and I was chair of Allied Arts Waterfront for All Committee. I was working very closely with our elected leaders, but also labor and business and neighborhood and enviros to say, what is it we're trying to accomplish down on the waterfront? We looked at every alternative. I was part of a stakeholder group, then most recently when we had the 30-member stakeholder group that was re-looking at all of this again. The opinion was we need to be moving freight, we need to be moving people. We definitely need to be creating a place where our environment can flourish down on the waterfront, that we can leverage this project to do more of what people for Puget Sound are advocating for cleaning up the sound, for making it more a better place, better habitat for salmon, salmonids, and then making it a possible economic engine. I mean, that's really 3 things that we're getting for this project. The viaduct, if you replaced it and rebuilt it, would be a 12-year project. The 12-year project, if you looked at the cost of mitigation and what the impact would be to the number of jobs down on the waterfront, whether that's port jobs, whether it's the businesses that are there, if you added in the mitigation costs for building a 12-year project, it would increase by multifold the overall cost of rebuilding the viaduct. And the tunnel project, in contrast, will allow the viaduct to stay up and for businesses, freight, and jobs to remain down on the waterfront while the bore tunnel is built. Engineers tell us that it can be built and that tunnel projects around the world are being built successfully and on budget, that the increase in cost comes when people want to do other things on the surface. So my look at this is that this is an investment in our future. This is not a sloppy decision. This is not a slow decision. It is a decision that's being made for all of us, and it's an investment that will provide us a great opportunity to be moving businesses, moving freight and people. And we also get something that is really not talked about much. We're getting additional transit hours. We're getting additional street and surface connections. We are going to have money to be able to move pedestrians, to add bicycle lanes. That's my goal and objective, and I see that as being extremely consistent with our environmental objectives towards density, increasing jobs, getting people back to work, and making this a region where we all want to live.
Okay. So what's your position on development impact fees?
There's pros and cons, obviously. Development fees, that you get additional amenity money for this, but the downside is that you are increasing the cost of housing for anybody who is buying it. So those things have to be in balance, just like incentive zoning must be balanced. I'm not sure that you can do a blanket statement that I entirely support them or oppose them. I would want to know, is it going for transportation, for concurrency? Is it going for additional infrastructure? Are we looking at supporting this kind of money for additional schools? So it's a conversation to be had, and I'm not blanketly for or against them. I just recognize the difficulty and the costs.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I guess as far as affordable housing and the levy, do you have any opinions on the levy itself, or would you have recommendations for changing it?
No, I support the levy, and we need to do everything we can to get it to pass.
Okay. And what is your position on corridor drilling?
corridor tolling. Only if the entire corridor is tolled will it work. I don't think it's right to do 520 alone. I would look at 520 plus I-90. I would look at the entire region as a system and make sure that people who are using it are paying, are not either overcharged or paying their fair share.
Okay. So I guess just to, do you have anything to add actually?
No, I mean, I'm kind of going through a list, and I think we've pretty much covered most of it.
I guess, so one last question would be, just kind of looking at kind of all the things combined, what you said, and I think it's clear that you feel we need to find extra funding for different things, and yet, you know, we don't want to do anything like head tax or other things that are basically creating a business environment that is not equitable to businesses.
Well, I'm just saying the head tax is probably off the table.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's being removed, so, you know, I wasn't debating that.
Okay. So I guess just, are there other ideas that you have for revenue generation, and how does that look?
Right, yes. For starters, I think the city needs to have a strategic plan where we're actually going through department by department to identify, are there better, smarter ways to do business? Is there money here that can be saved? Are there whole programs that we ought to be looking at to either pass to someone else or to eliminate entirely? And examples are many businesses, I mean, including Boeing recently, Virginia Mason. We did this when I was in Metro. We looked at this as a business model to say, how can we streamline? How can we do things more efficiently? How can we save money? I did this in the prosecuting attorney's office when I was managing 60 lawyers and half again as many legal staff. We were responsible for cutting our budget virtually every year that I was there. And we needed to be able to continue to provide the services that the county needed. Well, how do you do that? If various new services are needed, you have to cut something if you're not getting more people. And so what we did was have project teams. And I think that's something that the city can do very effectively, and it will be a huge benefit to people who are relying upon their services. And the way it would work is, rather than you in your silo doing your work and you in your department doing yours, we look at what is it we're trying to accomplish, and that we see, is there a permit that we're trying to issue as an example? Can we do this in a way that is more efficient and effective? And so rather than you doing your work and then it all be passed to you to do yours independently, we bring people together from the various departments and focus on, okay, how quickly can we get this done? Are we meeting the city's objectives? And this is something that I believe that the city is starting to do, but as a routine, if you can say, we're saving money here, we're getting things moved through more quickly, we're going to reduce the number of meetings, we want to bring people in and solve the problems. Employees are more excited about working, they feel good about what they're accomplishing, and the city can say, yes, this is what we're doing, we are providing Nordstrom quality service for our citizens. That is going to take a process such as the lean approach that Boeing and Virginia Mason did. And what we did in Metro Transit and what I did in the prosecuting attorney's office was simply a, how can we be more efficient? And we bring everybody in to solve that problem. I think that's a #1 goal, is for the city to really have a strategic plan, be mission driven, and figure out what it is that we're going to set as our highest priorities.
Okay.
And you think that alone would address the
current
current kind of funding crisis?
It's a first step.
Okay.
You know, it's not going to solve the problem alone, but it is a first step that can save millions of dollars and also help redeploy people, maybe in departments where we can find that there are better ways and more efficient ways to have the employees working. I mean, I can give you an example that, and this just struck me as being really silly. When I first filed for office, we had to do the public disclosure, all of the information. And in my family, we had one small business back east that my husband was on the board. It's called, coincidentally, the Bagshaw Company. It's been around for 150 years, and it's a teeny company that makes needles, textile needles. Does no work out here at all. But under public disclosure rules, we would have to disclose the client list of that company. And if you disclose the client list of a small company and there's very few other competitors, it can be a huge disadvantage to that business. we had to file, and rightfully so, we had to file a request for a waiver with the Public Disclosure Commission in Olympia. All was well. Eventually we got that. The waiver was granted. Then we came back up to the city and we had to go through the same process. That struck me as an unnecessary duplication, and when Brad went in to request the waiver, there were 7 board members and 6 staff members in there to consider the process. We had 13 people to consider a waiver that had already been approved by the state. Strikes me as maybe we should be looking at this and thinking about, are we using those resources as wisely as we can? So that's the kind of thing that I would like to say. Let's not prejudge, but let's figure out, is there a better way to do this?
Okay.
And maybe one other quick follow-up
Sure.
about affordable housing.
Right.
Is there a fairly